Hi everybody, it's Don and I hope you're having a fantastic day. Well, it leaves very little to doubt now that it wasn't foul play, as the coroner's report came out from Anna's passing on the Carnival Horizon, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We have a cruise ship that when you're going to check in for this cruise ship, you don't go to the cruise port. You're going to have to go to a hotel now in order to check in for the cruise ship. We'll talk a little bit about that. We have a Royal Caribbean ship that will be now canceling quite a few sailings going into Cozumel and switching them out for another port altogether. And a very big splash heard on the Carnival Radiance had the ship stopping, dropping lifeboats, and everybody running to the side to look for a man overboard. And we'll talk about what happened there. So by now, I'm sure you've all heard the story and the updates for Anna. And she was found stuffed under the bed, wrapped in a blanket, and a whole bunch of life jackets piled around her. That's why it was so hard for anybody to find and see her. And of course, the FBI was called in to investigate, and the latest news was that they were focusing on one of the step-siblings as a focal point of the investigation. And we were wondering, well, what exactly happened? Coroner's report has now come out, and she has been determined that she passed away from asphyxiation, and it was basically caused by an arm hold around the throat. So definitely foul play. There is no other way to describe this now. And you can be darn sure that that focal point will now be really strongly directed at who the main suspect is right now, and that's one of the step-siblings. And as I mentioned before, horrible story. The whole family's going to be broken up over this. It will be just like, talk about ripping every sense of family you have completely apart in this situation. It's horrible. So we'll have to wait and see until charges are actually laid. Next, let's talk about NCL. And the NCL Dawn is going to be sailing, and instead of going to the Tampa cruise port, you're now going to have to go to the Hilton, which is about 1.5 miles away from the actual cruise port, to check in, because of how busy it is on that particular day. Now, you won't have to walk from the hotel. They will be providing free shuttles back and forth. However, the check-in starts at, I believe, 11 a.m. and runs till 5 p.m. Here's the thing, though. If you were, say, planning on parking your car at the cruise terminal, now you got to park at the cruise terminal, drop your stuff off at the hotel, and go park, walk back to the hotel to do the check-in. And it seems like a bit of a mess going on right now, and that's for one of the upcoming sailings in early December. So yeah, not a fun situation. A lot of people are very confused by this. A lot of people are saying that, what are we going to do all day while we're waiting for the shuttles, checking in at the hotel? Just are they going to have customs and immigration at the hotel? There's a lot of unanswered questions around this, but if you show up at the cruise terminal, they're going to redirect you back to the hotel for you to go and do your check-in. Everybody must check in at the hotel. So if you're sailing on the Dawn out of Tampa, you're going to want to make sure you find out exactly what the situation is and what you have to go ahead and do ahead of time. We also have Royal Caribbean on some of their early cruises in February are changing the destination for one of their stops. You will no longer be going to Cozumel. They are now switching that up for Nassau. That's right, you're going to be going to Nassau instead of Cozumel. So far, I think it's 3 cruises that have been changed back to back to back. However, there is a high possibility that more changes will be happening in the future. They're citing basically port availability and overcrowding, so they are changing it up and bringing you to a less crowded destination for the cruise. Okay, Nassau, Cozumel, kind of both very different vibes when you're on a cruise. Completely a different feel altogether. But hey, at least you're still going to be in the Caribbean in February, where it's still very, very cold, and a lot of people will be freezing back home, and you're going to be cruising to Nassau. Not a bad situation, really, when you think about it. And finally, let's talk about what happened on the Carnival Radiance. But before I get there, let me just invite you to hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. You want to keep up to date with everything going on in cruising, from my new experiences on Carnival. Haven't been on Carnival in a decade. Happy to bring you all the updates on that. I'm back on the Celebrity Excel starting on Sunday. So yeah, lots of new content coming up. I'm going to keep you as best informed I can about all things going on in cruising, from the good stuff to the bad stuff to the stuff you need to know just to make your sailing easier, like going to the hotel instead of going to the cruise ship, because they're just going to turn you away anyway. So I hope you'll join us here. It doesn't cost anything, but it really does help the channel out, and I really do appreciate it. Okay. The Carnival Radiance was sailing, a normal sailing, when all of a sudden it was heard a rather large splash from the ship. So much so that not only passengers but crew members thought that obviously this must be somebody going overboard. And they announced to everybody, the crew, etc., the ship stopped, started doing a search. They even dropped a lifeboat down to search and everything. And then they started to do a count. And they did a head count of all passengers on board, as well as a head count of all crew members, only to find out that everybody seemed to be accounted for. So unless there was a stowaway on board that nobody knows about, it seems like it was a false alarm. Now, what could this have been? It could have been anything. It could have been a dolphin jumping up in the water. It could have been a whale and just went under that nobody noticed. It could have been so many different things that happened, but multiple people thought they heard a big, large splash that sounded like somebody going overboard. So it just goes to show that, you know what, I'm glad the ship stopped. I'm glad they did a full search, because it shows that people were paying attention and people were watching, and people wanted to err on the side of caution, which is exactly what you hope would be doing, right? You hope that they don't just, well, I didn't see anything, so I'm not going to report it. Or the cruise line saying, well, did you see anybody? No, you heard a noise? Well, that's not really proof that somebody went over. You know, you don't want to hear that. You want to hear them erring on the side of caution, and that's exactly what the crew of the Carnival Radiance and the passengers did as well. So bravo to that for them. All right. What do you guys think? What is this kind of crazy story of having to check in at a hotel and then being shuttled over to the cruise port? So many things could be up, and like if you're being dropped off, if you're being, you know, if you have shuttles from the airport going to the cruise port, well, now those shuttles are dropping you off at this hotel. And you got to wonder how the hotel feels about this with like thousands of people showing up at their hotel, and while they have customers in there, etc., and now they're going to be hanging around, you know, waiting for the shuttle to transport them over. The people who are staying there might not be able to get into the restaurant. It just sounds weird. It just sounds like a weird solution, but that's what they have to do. That's what they have to do. Let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, I hope you appreciate this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world? Hit that subscribe button. Until next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.